Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, neurotech.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Lindsay Hartland, and he's founder and CEO of Hanison Green, which is a neuromodulation startup navigator or compass, would you say? Or how would you say? Basically helping get talent for neuromodulation startups. Is that a good explanation? Or do you want to explain yourself better than I just, or explain your background better than I just did?
Oh, I think you've articulated that perfectly well. But yeah, we're a startup. We're a recruitment startup that is serving the neuromod startup world. So we're aiming early stage neuromodulation device innovators navigate their path through pre-commercial into getting their therapies and their devices into the marketplace and succeeding as a company. So by putting in, we want to help put in their key leadership people, key people at key stages of their development as and when they need them.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, we got to talk about names. Your name's Lindsay, which is in the States, it's a girl's name. That's a very strange name. And then Hanison Green, that doesn't have anything to do with your name. What's with all these names?
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, Lindsay is a girl's name in the UK as well. It is a boy's name, but it's quite rare. It's mainly a girl's name. I don't know why my mother and father decided to call me that. They tell me it was a popular boy's name when I was born, but that doesn't really stack up. Unfortunately, I wasn't given a middle name, else I probably would have used that. So pretty tough when I was a kid, growing the usual, Lindsay, that's a girl's name, isn't it? But as I got older, I learned to love it, and I quite like it now. It's a bit different. People remember it. For sure. Okay, so how about the name Hanison Green? And Hanison Green is slightly more complicated. It took me about 3 months to come up with that name, and I decided to use a method of writing down. I didn't want to link it to my name, and I didn't necessarily want to link it to a market or pigeonhole myself in a particular area based upon the name of my company. So I chose something generic, but Hanison Green is a combination of I wrote a list of all of the things in my lifetime that had inspired me, that had influenced me, names of people, names of films, events, people that have been close to me, that have supported me. And it's basically a mismatch of that, of about 2 or 3 words there that sounded relatively good together. And that's it. I won't bore you with the detail of how that came about, but that was the process that I went through to come up with Hanison Green. That is really interesting because it does sound like almost like a legal firm, a law firm or something like this, or a consultancy. So it does sound pretty legitimate. Okay, so let's talk about recruiting. Basically, we have talked to somebody about this on the show, Giovanni Laudicella of Lifeblood Capital. But why is this important for, especially neurotech startups? Why is this important for any startup to recruit? In my experience over the years, I've got about 20 years of recruitment experience now. Any company is only as good as a sum of all its parts, with its parts being its human capital. You're only as good as the people that you employ. You can have the best, if you're a med tech company, you can have the best technology, you can be developing the best therapy, you can have the best data, you can have the best everything, but you haven't got the best squad and the best people around you to push that company forward, you just can't succeed. So human capital is just the most important asset for any company. It's as simple as that. So I aim to try and find the best people for the best companies to help them take that next step in their evolution, get them closer to market or beyond. And I also think it's the biggest challenge that any company faces as well, in reality, getting the best people. And certainly now, coming out of a pandemic, something that none of us have really gone through in our lifetime, I've seen and I'm hearing from other peers of mine in different industry sectors around the world, the demand for people now, for talent, call it candidates, whatever you want to call it, is higher than I've ever seen it in my recruitment career. So there's a massive challenge to compete for people in the marketplace. It's not about just putting an advert out or dipping into your network or asking a few people. It's a real challenge now to get the best people for your business. Wow. Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing is almost there's like a demand. There's a bigger demand to maybe change jobs or go into these different positions. But meanwhile, the connections have been severed because people haven't been necessarily networking as much. So they don't know who's good. And so basically they have this need and no way to fulfill it. So I guess that's where you come in, right? Like, how do you know who's a good person
in especially such a small group where, having one new person could represent 20, 30% of the productivity of the new company?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think sometimes you have to use your instinct, because it's not, or your judgment over somebody's character and their values and their beliefs, but also their motivations as well. Because in my world, you could recruit off a piece of paper and you could provide a candidate that ticks the boxes of what's required from a skill or experience perspective. But often it's much more than that. It's not putting somebody into a permanent position, somebody that's going to grow with that business and hopefully stay with that business and be loyal to that business. Is much more than just ticking a box. Have they got 5 years experience of neural implants, for example? Have they achieved a 510K clearance or whatever the case might be? It's about, does this person fit the culture? Do they match with the values of that company and the beliefs? We say, is their personality going to be a fit for the culture of that company or the culture that company wants to develop? So it's very much a relationship game, I would say. It's about building relationships quite quickly with people and then understanding what makes them tick and who they are as a person and what drives them, rather than just fulfilling the requisite of a job description, for example. Does that make sense? I think that's the skill. That's the skill from our side.
That doesn't sound very scalable. It sounds like you have to spend a lot of time with the company and like really absorb their values and what they're looking for, spend a lot of time with the candidates. So you couldn't necessarily do hundreds of each, right?
No, I don't. I've personally never been about volume recruitment. I've been about quality, but putting people in at a senior level into critical positions, but focusing on, the quality rather than, there are recruiters out there that maybe do 5 or 10 placements a week, maybe more. I think at VP C level, I don't know if one person can achieve that effectively, but you're absolutely right. It's about really getting under the skin of a company and what makes them tick and what their company values are, what their vision is and what they're looking to achieve in the future. And can you provide somebody that matches that and wants to be on that journey with them?
How do you do that? It sounds like you're almost helping define the company, especially at the beginning stages of a company. They probably haven't figured a lot of this kind of stuff out. So do you actually help them figure that out? And then how long is this process? Sounds like a very long process.
I do try and help them figure them out if they need me to do that. I've never seen myself as somebody that just goes out and finds CVs or find resumes and throws them at a job description and then hope that something sticks. I think you have to really get to know the client and what their journey is and what they're hoping to achieve. Because in reality, because I'm tracking about 350 neuromod startups now, mainly within US and Europe. Now, some of those startups will have leaders in place. They'll have CEOs in place that have got a proven track record of blazing a trail within the medtech startup world. They might have been 4 years as a CEO of one company and taken them from pre-commercial into a successful launch, maybe got them IPO acquisition, and they've moved on and done it again and done it again. When you deal with these CEOs, they tend to have a very clear picture of their roadmap, who they need, at what stage of their development. But then on the other hand, I'd say the majority of CEOs are first-time CEOs. They're founder CEOs and possibly even a patient founder where they've created their neuromod startup off the back of their own medical condition previously. That's quite common, and that's also very inspiring as well, by the way. But these first-time CEOs, they don't know all of the answers and they're reliant upon the advice that they're given at certain stages. And that's when I can, and I don't, of course, know all of the answers to their questions, but because I'm in this space, I can give advice or tell them what has happened in other situations with other companies that I've worked with and what worked for them at this stage, whether it be putting in a VP into this position that could really help channel their development in a certain area, or whether they need to strengthen their scientific advisory board, or maybe get a consultant in some form of part-time capacity. And that's the part of the job that I really enjoy as well.
Yeah. And what about that? I've heard a lot of times hiring is not the right answer, and it might be too early and they might not need like a full-time position. What's your opinion on that? Hiring a consultant versus hiring an employee?
Great question. I think there's a lot of variables. I think when you're looking at a startup, a pre-commercial startup, more often than not, if not always, they're invested. They're going through a round of investment, or they're seeking investment at some point in the future. And it's always about the runway. How much runway have you got, essentially, before you run out of cash? And it'll be called the burn rate. How much cash are they burning through? So if you've got a 6-month runway as a pre-commercial startup, maybe you're pre-Series A, and you're thinking about bringing in a VP in any position full-time, in the US, you're probably looking at around a circa 200K, 250K salary there. That's going to burn through your cash real quick. But sometimes the leader might just envisage that's the only way to do it. But then that might be dependent upon the workload and the timeline of when something needs to happen. Then that can sometimes be a consultancy position. It might even be an advisory position where somebody's just coming in and offering, they're sitting in the board meetings, they're offering maybe 2 or 3 hours a month. That can sometimes be enough. And sometimes with advisory positions, it's sometimes pro bono, sometimes not paid for. There's maybe a little bit of equity, or that person who's providing the advisory, they just get it on their resume. They get it on their LinkedIn profile that they're on the scientific advisory board for this company. It makes them look good and looks good on their resume, so to speak. So there's lots of options for any particular scenario, but you're right. It's not always about just putting in a permanent person, because that will burn through money very quickly. Once you've got sales coming in, or you're a public company, obviously these challenges change.
Yeah, but 250K, that actually would burn through the cash really fast. I've heard a lot, like companies raising a few million, 5, 10 million or something like this, but you get a few people like that and boom, there goes all your money.
Because if you're pre-commercial, you need that 3 million or 5 million or whatever to develop the product. You need it to build your clinical trials. And then once you get your clearance, you're probably going to need anywhere between $20 and $50 million to actually launch and scale your device once you hit the market. And I think a lot of people can underestimate the amount of expenditure that goes into getting a new device into the marketplace. And you start putting loads of human capital in early on, like you just said, you're going to burn through that very quickly indeed. It's a fine balancing act. You think of a CEO, they've got all these plates that they're spinning and they're just trying to keep them all from toppling off the end of the spike, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. keep everything up. Hey guys, just a quick pause to talk about our show sponsor, Iris Biomedical. Iris Biomedical provides a portfolio of neural sensing and simulation platforms and components to accelerate early-stage medical device companies through preclinical and early feasibility studies. Iris is an ideal partner for companies with limited budgets or resources to invest in developing a new platform from the ground up. Their experienced engineering team, in-house cleanroom facilities, and ISO 13485 certified quality management system allow for prototyping and early-stage commercial production. Be sure to tell them you heard about it on the Neural Implant Podcast. That'll really help us out. Thanks. Now, back to the show. So, okay, let's say hypothetically, I want to earn 250K. How would I do that? Or how do you find these people? And had they already had to have experience in this? And then how do they get experience doing that? And I guess, what are you looking for these hypothetical 250K earners?
The hypothetical 250K earners, the people that are earning that sort of money, they will have experience. They would have been in those VP positions for some time, I imagine. Several years, they would have come up through the ranks, director, then VP. More often than not, the best people at this level, or in any level really, whether you're talking people on the ground, maybe a salesperson, maybe a regulatory person that is executing, right up to somebody working on the strategy, C-level VP, the best people, and this comes down to the main challenge in my job, and the main challenge any company will find when looking to grow their business, is the best people tend to be working in jobs that they quite like. There's a talent shortage. There's not enough people to go around. There's not enough great people to go around for every company that's looking to grow. So a part of our job, a bit of a crude way of saying it, is poaching people from other companies. But these people will tend to be reasonably happy where they are. So then the skill and what's required is you have to really, going back to what you said, you really have to know the client that you're working with. What's so special about them? Why would somebody really want to work for them? What's the exciting thing? Because the cliche statement in my industry is an exciting opportunity. If you have a look on LinkedIn and look at any job advert, 9 out of 10 job adverts will start an exciting opportunity. I find it quite funny, but really you need to cut through that and work out, why is it exciting? Because my job mainly involves tempting people away from where they are at the moment to go to another opportunity. It's not like there's this pool of candidates out there just with their hand up. These great candidates, come and get me. I'm looking for a new job. The better people tend to be already employed in good jobs.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you have to poach people a lot of times. What's the reception to the poaching? How does the company handle it? And do they become bitter at the company that poached the other people? And then to poach somebody, do you have to pay them significantly more? And is that how they're earning so much more money? And then are they on board too? Like maybe they spent a long time at the previous company and then they're suddenly going to a different one. So what's the mechanics of all this, of this poaching business that you're in?
Yeah, it's a big part of it is you need to, first of all, identify where these people are, where they're hanging out. LinkedIn's a good platform for that. I would say it's the most important tool for a recruiter. If you get a recruiter license, and they're not cheap, you can access probably 95%, if not more, of the talent market. Everybody's hanging out on LinkedIn, but that means that all of the recruiters are as well. So a lot of the better people, they'll be getting bombarded, I would say. They'll be getting a lot of messages from recruiters trying to tempt them. Now, the problem with that is the majority of that volume will be generic messaging. Hi, I've looked at your profile. I think it's perfect for a job that I'm recruiting for. Now, if I'm receiving a message like that, where there's nothing personal to me, and clearly they haven't looked at my profile, they've just told me they're looking at my profile, then I'm probably not even going to respond to that. I'll just hit the delete button. There's a big difference between receiving a message like that and receiving a message from somebody that clearly has looked at your profile and has matched it to the job brief that they have. And maybe they compliment you on your tenure or your progression or the technology that you've been working on and really massage that ego within you and make you feel good about the approach. Wow, somebody's looked at my profile. Somebody's noticed that I've done this previously in my career. So again, it goes back to, rather than it being volume, you're very pinpointed with the people that you're trying to attract. And that 9 times out of 10 will get somebody responding, because by human nature, we're quite curious, aren't we? You know, you might be really happy in your job, but if somebody massages your ego and compliments you on your career history and then links it very closely to a great role that they're working on, more often than not, that person's going to be looking over the fence like that and, right, I'm going to see if that grass is a little bit greener than on my side. And then once you've got that, you've got a conversation lined up. It's down to what I said earlier, it's about relationship building. You find out about that person. What do they like about their current role? Where do they see their career going in the next sort of 5 years? Do they think that they can meet their career goals in their current company? What might be holding them back? And you're just looking for a little bit of a chink, maybe something that they're not happy with. And if you can fill that gap, then you might have a reasonable chance of tempting them out of that company. Sorry, a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's a little bit of the process that I would go through.
No, I think that's really good. And yeah, I'm gonna ask about the so you're saying a chink in the armor, and so basically they should be unhappy. They're probably unhappy with something in their company, and you're gonna be able to fix that with the new one. Because the way I'm imagining is like you have to offer them significantly more money to be able to entice them, but obviously not everybody's 100% content with their current job, right?
No, and I'll put a bit of context on that. What you've just actually said, that you're assuming that you would have to dangle maybe another $50,000 or more equity or a bigger bonus pot, whatever it might be. But in reality, I haven't got the data in front of me right now, but if I can think off the top of my head on my last half a dozen placements, probably 5 out of 6 were passive candidates, which is what I'm talking about. People that aren't looking for a new job. I've actually had to go and identify them and tempt them. I think only one of those had a pay rise. I think the others were either a straight swap on the package or even they took a little drop in their salary. I've learned over the years, you can make assumptions as a recruiter. I used to assume that when you've got to get somebody more money, you haven't. It's not most person's main driver. People want job fulfillment. They want to get up each morning and feel good about what they're going into work for and what the company's striving toward. And, you know, are they being developed? Are they growing within that company, or are they stale? Money's important to all of us, but it's not the main driver. We just want to be able to pay our bills and maintain a certain lifestyle. Most people don't want to be rich or have any aspirations to be millionaires. I'm sure they'd love to, but they're not necessarily striving toward it. People just want to enjoy their work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're spending a third of your hours or half of your waking hours doing something. So might as well be doing something you like.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the people that you work with? Do you believe in the product or the service of the company? Are you growing with the company? Do you get recognition? Do you get a pat on the back for doing it? Do people recognize that you're doing a good job? Have you got autonomy? Are you allowed to operate within a framework of your role without somebody breathing down your neck? All of these sorts of things add up to job fulfillment. And if that's a skill of the recruiter, the person might not know it until you speak to them, but you start asking them about what's important in their role and are they satisfied with that aspect of their role? Within 30 minutes, you can get that person thinking, maybe, do you know what? Maybe there is something out there, a better fit for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so you got it sounds like you hire a lot. You have a C-suite leader in a company and you're looking for other leaders in other companies. Do you sometimes find these positions in other places? So for example, academia, maybe somebody's run a lab for a long time, or maybe somebody's run an engineering team, or maybe outside of neuromodulation, or is that switch harder to make? Do you keep it in the same categories, or do you find cross-pollination can work better or worse sometimes?
Yeah, I think it very much depends on the situation. I think in any profession, I think you're always going to be better at your job and be more efficient if you're kind of specialist in what you do. If you try as much as you can to be an expert in a small area, because every person is only one person, there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, there's only a certain amount that you can do. And it's so easy, and I would say this probably for any industry sector, that's any commercial position, it's so easy to be tempted by low-hanging fruit. I've had many companies come to me and say, can you find me a graduate or somebody with a couple of years experience, maybe a PhD in neurotech? And I could take that on, but that would mean taking me away from what I do day to day. But not only that, if somebody asked me to find somebody with 2 years experience, I haven't got a network of that. All my network is director level upward. It's director, VP, C-level. And not only that, I'm probably about 80-90% commercial, as in I try and stay within sales and marketing if I can, which leads me to mainly work with companies probably a couple of years pre-commercial up to having maybe their MVP in place. And because at that point, they're probably thinking about, right, we need to start looking at our commercial strategy now, market access, go to market. I could work within regulatory, I could work within quality, engineering, everything, sales, marketing, reimbursement, all within that. But then I'm spread very thin, and I don't think I can provide an expert service if I start to do that.
Yeah, what do they say? Better inch wide and a mile deep rather than a mile wide and an inch deep, something like that, right? Because in the end, otherwise you'd be doing just LinkedIn searches, Google searches, which is what the companies could be doing by themselves.
Exactly,
anyways.
they can do that themselves. Yeah, every search I would be starting from scratch. Whereas if I look at for example, my sales and marketing network, I would say I'm connected to probably 90% of the sales VPs, marketing VPs throughout the US and Europe. And not only that, I've spoken to most of them as well. So that means if somebody comes to me and says, right, I want a sales VP, we're 18 months before market, I want somebody to help me put together the go-to-market strategy, implantable, wearable or whatever, I can straight away think of 5-10 people that could probably do a good job for them. And that's for me the value that I want to be able to bring, because then it can be a quick and slick process. It doesn't have to take months and months, trial and error. Hopefully I've already got a relationship with some of these people and I can access them very quickly.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so let's say you're being poached, you're being headhunted, and you get enticed to go into a different company. Does that person have to pay, or how do you make money? How are you able to survive and get compensated for this? I guess who pays for this? The client.
The company that's hiring. What I've noticed is it seems quite common in the US. I've been finding since I've been working in the US that candidates are quite happy to pay money for companies, not necessarily for recruitment consultancies, but for people to help them put together a great resume, for example, critique their resume and streamline it, whatever. That seems really common. It doesn't really happen in the UK, but I speak to a lot of people that say, yeah, I've spent this to And this is another story because I think resumes now, I personally think they're not that important. I think it comes down to the quality of the recruiter. I actually think your LinkedIn profile is more important than your resume. That's debatable. I'm sure there's many people that will disagree with me. But yeah, the client pays the fee ultimately. And that can be, I really only work retained. So I work on a project basis where we'll agree a fee, a project fee, and then we'll split that down like you would any project really into deliverables. So a payment up front, a payment when we meet a certain milestone, and then a payment upon project completion. And that's good for startups because they get to kind of budget and be clear on when their expenses are happening rather than, right, here's a massive bill at the end of the project.
Yeah, definitely. That does seem easier. Yeah. So you mentioned something maybe people are not doing too well, maybe focusing on the CV or the resume instead of their LinkedIn. What are some other big problems or things that you wish, if you had the magic wand and you could solve it, like what other thing would you solve that you're just like, what's going on?
I would like, and this is to help clients. I think it's easier to be a candidate looking for a job than it is for a company trying to find talent. That's really clear now. So for a candidate, really all you need to do, I think, is have a good LinkedIn profile. What I mean by that is picture. This is crazy, right? I see so many people that have just got that silhouette thing on LinkedIn. It just seems a bit shady for me. Why wouldn't you show yourself? And that might only seem a minor thing, but have a picture, but don't have a picture where you're frowning or looking too serious. Make yourself look approachable. And then I think you should put career accomplishments and stuff like that. Treat it like a resume, because by the time your resume comes into play, you've already got your foot in the door. So your LinkedIn profile is your shop window. People see that before they see your resume. That's why I put so much importance on it. But I guess if I could wave my magic wand, I would use that to upskill hiring companies on how to attract talent themselves. Recruiters are very important, and I think it's underestimated the important role that we play. But I think companies could do so much more for themselves by the way that they promote their job opportunities. If you went on LinkedIn and did a job search within neurotech, I haven't done it recently, but I'd hazard a guess that at least half of those jobs, maybe more, that you saw would pretty much just be a list of what the person needs to have before they apply for that job. We're recruiting for a product development VP. This is what you need to have, 5 years experience. And they basically just list a load of requirements. There's no sell there. My magic wand would be upskilling companies so they're really selling themselves. They're telling a story about the journey that they're on and why somebody should consider being a part of that journey. Why should I leave my company and consider joining your company now? What's really exciting about that? You know, what's your vision? What are you hoping to achieve? What's the end result for the patient if your product makes it to the market? Because it's quite the opposite of that at the moment. And I think that's where a lot of companies fail with their talent acquisition, because they don't engage with recruiters properly. Instead, they try and use their own devices, but they don't do it properly. They're just listing skills and requirements.
So almost inspire people or sell them on the mission, or how would you exactly recommend this?
Whatever it is that they're proud of, whatever it is, the journey that they're on, why are they working there? Why is the CEO of that company? Why is the VP and the leadership team, why do they work there? If you can encompass that, if you can encapsulate that into a message and put it out there, come and join us for these reasons. It could be anything. It could be the mission statement, vision statement. It could be the fact that you're developing a therapy that just doesn't exist at the moment. There's only pharmaceutical solutions out there, and you're going to bring a device to market with no side effects. It's going to help people at the moment that are reliant maybe on opioids or whatever it might be, and why somebody should get excited about that and what that's going to mean to the patient's life once that therapy reaches the market. Just anything that is considered an attractive aspect of that company or that role, I think that should be in it. It should be in a job brief. It shouldn't just be a list of skills and experience. And it frustrates me every time I see one. I'm like, man, nobody's going to apply for that. Or the people that are going to apply for it are going to be people that are maybe immediately available, that may not even be that very good. They're desperate for a job. You're not going to get the people that are quite happy where they are. You're not going to turn their heads with a list of descriptions. You're going to turn somebody's head by putting somebody on there that's going to make them go, wow, I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like dating, and maybe there are a lot of parallels. You don't necessarily put your net worth and your salary and where you went to school and like all this stuff. You get them on, you hook them with the other stuff. So I guess you must be an expert dating coach or something like that.
Like Hitch.
Hitch, exactly.
Now, maybe if it doesn't work out, I can transfer that into the dating.
Yeah, for sure. I think this has been really good. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention?
No, not at all. I feel privileged to be in the neurotech space, is what I'd say. I didn't really know anything about neuromod or neurotech a couple of years ago. Purposely, I wanted to challenge myself at this stage in my life and this stage in my career. I wanted to do something new. I wanted to use all of it was 18 years at the point of staffing experience and put it into a bit more of a meaningful sector. So I chose medtech, and then I very quickly stumbled across neuromod. So I feel quite privileged that I'm actually able to help companies in this space grow. I think that people are fantastic. Everybody's on a mission and everybody's so patient focused. I find it inspiring. And yeah, I'm just proud to be a part of that journey.
That's really cool. Well, so why neurotech?
Do you know what it was? I had a really flawed strategy when I got into medtech. I decided I was going to conquer the US one state at a time. Right? So I chose Florida because I thought, I did my research, and it's like the second or third biggest medtech population. It's East Coast, so it's only a 5 hours difference to me. And I think there are about 12,000 companies or something like that, if I remember. There's a lot of medtech within Florida. So I'll go in there and I'll make a name for myself in Florida. Then I'll go on to California or wherever it might be. And completely flawed in hindsight. I'm like, wow, how naive was that? But what it was about 2 weeks into trading. I spoke to a chap in Florida who was involved in neuromodulation. And later, it was just the passion that he spoke to me about. I'd spoken to a few people in spinal and so on and so forth. And they were like, yeah, how are you doing and stuff, which was great. But the passion that this person spoke to me about neuromodulation, and I bought into that, and I got off the phone and I researched it. I researched that part of medtech, and I just fell in love with it straight up. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the innovation, the fact that it's almost limitless potential what you can achieve through neuromodulation. And we're only really just beginning to know what that potential is. We're not even scratching the surface. And I just think it's just going to be incredibly exciting to see how that transpires over the next 5, 10, 15 years. You put BCI into the equation as well. If you look at neurotech as a whole, I'm only really looking at neuromod at the moment. You look at BCI, what the companies like Neuralink are doing, Tom Oxley's company, and it's just, wow. It's science fiction stuff. And I think I get excited about technology. I like it. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think the Neuromod community is happy to have you. So, Lindsay, thanks so much for coming on. This has been really interesting and giving some insights into this world. And yeah, I think this was great.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.